Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the regular council meeting for the August 17th, 2015. Call the regular meeting of council to order. Are there any introduction of late items, please?
Thank you, Worship. So on the addendum, I'll just start with the first item, which is 8D, the Terminal Nickel Street Corridor Streetscape Project Steering Committee. The two changes there is, one, to remove the Nanaimo Port Authority membership from the terms of reference. And concurrently with that is to not appoint Mr. Michael Davidson of the Nanaimo Port Authority to that committee. So that's the first change. Under 8D, removing the rezoning application 355 for 2392 Barclay Road. So removing that from the agenda completely. Item 8L, under unresolved building deficiencies, remove 2180 Bay Street. And 9F, property maintenance bylaw, two to be removed. First being 4205 Jinglepot Road, and the second is 3129 King Richard Drive. So that last one's a new one. That's not on the addendum. In addition, I understand Councillor Brennan, Councillor Kipp, and Councillor Thorpe may have additional items.
Yeah, thank you.
And yourself as well.
Thank you. First item that I would like on the amendment is item 6A, to remove that. Yep. Next. Additional amendments. Councillor Kipp.
Well, I had a late item on that, so that would be cancelled, but I'd like to bring up a thing about a lacrosse team and a championship. Just like to know where I would bring that up at.
Your Worship, perhaps other business?
Okay, other business.
14C.
C?
C.
Okay, thank you.
14C, thank you. And who else was there, Mr. Jackson? Councillor Brennan.
I wanted to add Mr. Dave Shillabere, Departure Bay Neighborhood Association, who wishes to speak about the Departure Bay beachfront improvements in 9E.
9E. Delegation. Any others? Councillor Thorpe?
I wish to bring forward a notice of motion.
Thank you.
At that part of the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Under 13. Thank you. It's 13A. 13.
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favour? Thank you. Mr. Jackson, can I trouble you to have Shaw Auditorium or staff remove these objects from the counter, please?
Certainly, Your Worship.
Okay, the next item. Next item, 7A, Council Charter.
Hang on. This is my private property.
Sir? Would you please remove your private property from the counter?
These are visual aids.
Sir, would you please remove those from the counter?
Are you now screening visual aids presented to council?
Sir, will you please remove those?
I don't see why.
What do they help us do visually, sir? Are they sending a message, sir?
They are sending a message, a very clear message.
What might?
It's called a flip-flop.
Yes, what might that be, sir?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think I have the right to provide a visual.
Sir, if you want to come as a delegation, please sign up as a delegation. We love to talk to you. Please remove those.
I was here to do exactly that. You've now removed item 6A on your request to run away to China.
It's no longer on the agenda, sir.
That's
So
what
you
I'm saying.
can remove your visual aids.
Your visual aid is here until the end of the meeting.
Sir, I'm not going to argue with you.
I would suggest it's a point of order and that it should be voted on.
It's not a point of order, sir.
And can you tell me under what authority?
Under Section 132 of the Community Charter.
And can you quote that section to me, sir?
Yes, I can. The mayor or any member presiding at a council meeting must preserve order and decide points of order that may arise. Section 133 says, if a person presiding at a council meeting considers that another meeting is acting, a person at the meeting is acting improperly, the person presiding may order that person be expelled from the meeting. If the person who is expelled does not leave the meeting, a peace officer may enforce the order under subsection 1 as if it were a court order.
But you pulled that routine on us when it was assigned. I purposely came here tonight so that without a sign.
Sir, you are disrupting our meeting. I'm asking you to remove those or I will have you removed.
Are you suggesting that these are disrupting the meeting?
Sir, you are disrupting our meeting.
No. You
Sir,
asked that they be removed.
Sir.
I explained to you it is my private property.
Mr. Jackson, can you call security, please?
Do you not think
The meeting will be adjourned until such time as this gentleman is removed. You are expelled, sir.
now
Your
you're
worship.
telling us that we cannot wear what we can wear and what we
Meeting is adjourned. We will take a recess.
don't like any criticism, do you?
All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the delay. So, item 7A.
Staff isn't worship, does that matter?
Well, no. Recording secretary is here. All right, so next item, council charter. Role of the mayor, role of council, council staff relations, mayor declaration, and councillor declaration. About a week and a half ago, there was a newspaper article concerning the fact that this item appeared not to have been signed by all members of council. So, subsequent to that, Councillor Brennan brought forward a motion that she requested that the document, which is our councillor and mayor declaration concerning the council charter, be brought to the next meeting for signature. So at this particular point in time, I believe everybody has received a copy of that council charter. Councillor Brennan, you appear to want to speak to the motion.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This was an oversight on my part. I do not recall seeing the declaration with the signature line. I do recall the declaration. I do recall the work that we did for several months of the last term. And so I supported this work then, and I continue to support it. So I wanted an opportunity to affirm this publicly so that my commitment to upholding the principles of and the conduct that's expected of us here, I wanted to be able to do that in public and invite and just make the opportunity available for anyone else who wished to do so, who as I had missed signing it. So
Thank you.
That's why I asked for it.
Thank you. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just with regards to the $50,000 we're spending with Ms. McKenzie, does that somehow relate to what this is at all?
No. No, let me take you back. This was after we created the strategic plan, and council, I believe, unanimously approved the strategic plan. There was a governance steering committee that was created, of which all members of council were members of that committee. On May 21st last year, there was a final meeting of the governance steering committee. And I will read you what was passed at that meeting. It said, it was moved and seconded that the committee recommend that council adopt the council charter, councillor roll, mayor roll, council staff relations protocol, and council member declaration documents with amendments discussed at the governance steering committee meeting held 2014, May 21st. The motion carried. That item subsequently came to the following council meeting, which was held on June 9, 2014, and it was moved and seconded that council adopt the council charter, role of council, role of mayor, council staff relations protocol, councillor declaration, and the mayor declaration documents as attached, appendices A to F. The motion carried. So that was intended to come into effect upon the new council being sworn in.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up on that, with that steering committee, was there a hired professional to help draft the terminology?
There were numerous.
So this is what we're doing with the exercise with Ms. McKenzie. Is that going to elaborate what our roles and when we...
She certainly made inquiries as to what we've done with this. This all came out of what was known as the Watson Report. And the meetings that were facilitated with respect to this were done by ex-mayor of Saanich, Alison Habkirk. She was the consultant on this portion of that project.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Oh, I just wanted to say that after the discussion has been held, that if you would give me an opportunity, I would read out the declaration so that everyone knows what we're signing. Everyone at home knows what we're signing, and that the affirmation is made in public.
So we're going to need a motion. Going to need a motion with respect to the signing off. Are we not, Mr. Jackson?
No, Your Worship, there's no
Thank you.
motion.
No motion required. Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
All right. The preamble of this is the purpose of the City of Nanaimo Councillor Declaration is to provide councillors with the opportunity at the beginning of and throughout each term of office to affirm their commitment to the council charter, council role, council staff relations protocol documents. And the councillor declaration reads, as a member of the City of Nanaimo Councillor, I agree to uphold the principles of and conduct myself in accordance with the City of Nanaimo Council Charter, Councillor Role Description, and Council Staff Relations Protocol documents adopted by the City of Nanaimo. I affirm that I have read and understood the City of Nanaimo Council Charter, Councillor Role Description, and Council Staff Relations Protocol documents.
Thank you. There's also another one, which is the Mayor Declaration. As the Mayor of the City of Nanaimo, I agree to uphold the principles and the conduct and principles of and conduct myself in accordance with the City of Nanaimo Council Charter, Mayor Role, Council Staff Relations Protocol documents adopted by the City of Nanaimo Council. I affirm I have read and understood the City of Nanaimo Council Charter, Mayor Role, and Council Staff Relations Protocol documents. So I have signed that some time ago. Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kipp, or Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did sign the Councillor Declaration at the start of this term. I'll happily sign it again. I believe in it. I think this entire document, the Council Charter, which includes roles and responsibilities of mayor and councillors, while perhaps not legally binding, I'm not sure, but definitely I think morally binding, and I feel extremely important. It's not just about being nice and good behavior. I think it goes to how we conduct ourselves, how we conduct business as a council. It asks us to be professional and businesslike, which I think the public expect and want. It defines how we should interact with each other, between councillors, council to mayor, council to staff, which is also very important. And I think we have some improving to do in those areas. I'll just comment that in my election campaign personally, I stated that I believed in respectful communication and in enhancing cooperative teamwork between councillors and city staff, and I still believe in those things, and I want to do what I can to help achieve them. I think we as council, and certainly myself included, have been all part of the problem, if there has been one, and I think that is perceived, and I think as a result we all need to be part of the solution. And one step of that solution, I think maybe a good first step, is for council to support this council charter that we have in front of us, to accept and understand our role of governance, and to follow the protocols that are laid out in that document, and be prepared for consequences if we don't do so. We need to hold ourselves accountable. So I look forward to, again, reaffirming my commitment to that document. Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Kipp.
Imagine I'm on the other side of this issue. I signed my oath of office with Doug Cowling when I got elected. I found this this whole issue of the governance model to be, signing a paper. If people have already signed this paper, and I've seen some of the actions that have been sent my way, and some of the actions I've responded with, my issues of files, comments, actions, and when I hear business-like, what does that mean? Business-like. Does that mean I wear a suit and tie and make business decisions? Does it mean I wear denim and run a logging company out in the dirt? So what does business-like mean to me? Treating people with respect when they earn it. I don't expect respect, I hope to earn it. So from my perspective, will this change? Because, Your Worship, I've had concerns with representation of the chair, for example, on the dams, and voicing your concerns about voting in opposite direction. So that's been a concern to me. Will that change by signing a piece of paper? When I look at communicating information to council between meetings, reflect the will of council. Will that change if you sign this or if I sign this? My actions will be judged by the people that vote me into place, I guess. I'll treat people with respect. And as I said, with this first thing, I gave the lawyer the 1993 same problems existed in 1993 at UBCM. I shipped it out to the last council and handed it out to them. It's a bunch of pages from 1993 with the same issues. And from my perspective, this same document wanted to limit the amount of people that could come and speak to council. That was part of the document. Only 4 people could speak on every issue at council. So I've been in disagreement with this communication and its points for quite some time now. The separation of governance and that. I mean, I look in this. Governance is a set of responsibilities and practices, policies, and procedures used to provide strategic direction and ensure objectives are achieved, manage risk, and use resources responsibly with accountability. That's my role as governance. We don't get involved in risk management, hardly at all. We get a report and we vote on it. So our governance on risk management. So this document, to me, the role of a councillor, my role exists on the right-hand side of page 30, left-hand side of page 36, that is the community charter, and that's my roles. To continue to add to our roles, to me, is just it's a continuation of governance over democracy. And I want democracy over governance. So I won't sign this document. I found it to be a waste. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. Well, I am totally in agreement with the document and with all of the pieces that we've been given that have been mentioned tonight. I've had a great deal of experience working within a governance model and on the management end of that governance model. And I think sometimes just by looking through these documents that are set to guide us, I mean, we come into this job and we're new to the job. We need guidance, we need support, we need to understand what is expected of us. And I think these documents are a reminder of that. I think understanding a governance model is really, really important, and I think sometimes over the months that have passed, we have forgotten where the lines are. We are a governance council. That's what is expected of. We set strategic direction, and we do that through long and short-term strategic goals. Our strategic plan is now coming to an end at the end of 2015, and we certainly need to work on that again. That's our job. We work on putting together an annual budget along with staff, and then we approve that budget. And then we ensure that proper policies and procedures are in place so that we can meet the objectives of the city. And we do that by hiring a city manager. And our city manager is the only employee of the city council. And it's his job to plan, to organize, to direct and control organizational resources, human resources, financial resources, physical resources, and information resources in the pursuit of organizational goals. He does that by hiring staff, and he chooses those staff based on their professional expertise to get the job done. Our city, despite what some people seem to think, has a very competent city manager who has done a great job of choosing the right people to carry out the work of the city. We need to sign this document to remind ourselves what our job is and what the job of our staff is. And we need to honor those roles, and it is in that way that we move forward in a productive manner. And I am all for signing this, and I will sign it now. I have already signed it once, but I'll do it again. And I do believe this is an important piece of governing ourselves and making sure that we stay on track with what our role is versus what our staff's role is.
Seeing no other speakers, I just wanted to say, with respect to a comment that was made about the will of council, on May 21st, 2014, when this was at the Governance Review Committee, I voted against it. On June the 9th, 2014, I also voted against it. However, the will of council, the majority of council, which we've heard that expression used a lot lately, said that we will. It said that this is how we'll conduct ourselves. So when I took office, I signed it because it was a will of council and because I believe in it. I'm also prepared to sign it again. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I too voted against it, the same as our chair, Mayor McKay. In December of 2005, in December of 2008, in December of 2011, and December of 2014, I swore an oath to office to represent the city to the best of my ability following the election as per the community charter in and before the public in front of His Worship Judge Cowling. That has not changed. It hasn't changed since 2005. If those people who are my judge and jury choose to not prefer the manner in which I conduct my business at this table and or how I conduct myself personally and professionally, then they have every ability to take that into consideration in November in 38 months. So for the same reasons that Mayor McKay and I chose not to sign this declaration, which is strictly voluntary on 2 previous occasions, remains the same today for me. And I will continue to perform the functions that I was voted to represent as best as I can to the best of my ability, with or without the signing of this voluntary document. Also inside this governance document was the limit of time that it may allow for our staff to provide information back to councillors, and it was limited at 30 minutes. Members of the community that wish to come to speak at the podium were to be restricted and limited in this very same document. Members of council were to be limited to how long they were permitted to speak on any or certain topics. For me, those were deal breakers. This is strictly voluntary, and those who wish to sign it may, without judgment, no judgment. Those who choose not to sign it should not be judged either until Judgment Day, November 2015. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Reading through all of the documents is very interesting, very group hug dialogue in there, nicey, let's all get along. I said this to the press before, I don't have to like anybody on council, but I have to work with them, and that I am willing to do. That is what I signed when I signed at the inaugural meeting with Justice Cowling. Also hidden in that document is, and Jim Taylor sent this to everybody, is a paragraph that I've been concerned with. I've got quite a number of concerns with this. And the paragraph goes, consequences for serious breaches of agreed to performance expectations, such as release of confidential information, improper use of influence, conflicts of interest, discreditable conduct such as bullying or intimidation, can include a motion of censure, reassignment of committee or other civic appointments and duties, or limitations on access to staff or municipal resources. That gives an awful lot of power to an individual. If they disagree with what someone is saying, if they think they're bullying, they can make a motion to have you removed from the meeting, such as was made by the mayor to Tim McGrath tonight. we had an issue. The mayor made, using his powers, had Tim McGrath removed from the council meeting. One of the questions Jim asked is, two of them, there's actually, who would determine when vigorous debate is interpreted as bullying or intimidation? So that could be anybody on the council could do that. And that could result in someone having to leave the meeting. The other question is, can council apply the same sanctions to the chair? It's not in this document that council can do the same with the chair. Seems like the chair would have unlimited powers, which, some would say he already does. I'm not going to sign this. Whether you sign it once, twice, 3 times, I don't think signing it mandates you to follow it. It is voluntary to sign it. I know when I make mistakes, and I will work to correct those mistakes when I make them. But I don't need a document to tell me what I need to do. Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Can staff, through you, tell me, what was the motion when this was voted on? When was that?
Maybe I can help you. May 21st, 2014. Was moved and seconded that committee recommend that council adopt the council charter, councillor roll, mayor roll, council staff relations protocol, and council member declaration documents with amendments discussed at the governance steering committee meeting held 2014, May 21st. The motion carried. Then there was a subsequent motion at council on June the 9th. It was moved and seconded that council adopt the council charter, roll of council, roll of mayor, council staff relations protocol, council declaration, and the mayor declaration documents as attached to the report. The motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to correct a couple of things that were said. Never was the previous council required to sign this document. Yes, originally during discussions at the governance committee, there were limits discussed with respect to council debate, length of time of council debate, which is used in many communities. That council last time, previous council did not agree with that, so those were not adopted. So it's nowhere to be found in this document. Limits of delegates time, that was also discussed. A number of delegates, that was also discussed. Never was that adopted by the governance committee. So it's not in this document. Requirements to sign were not there for the previous council. It was intended to be signed upon the new council taking office. The items that Councillor Fuller talks about with respect to consequences and censure, those items are already bound within the community charter. So they don't form part of this document. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you, Your Worship. In regards to the document, I as well on December 1st, very comfortable and very honored to represent, sworn in that evening, and very honored to represent all 4 corners of the city and sign in front of Justice Cowling, which was a legal document. So I want to touch on my interactions. At times may have been overly passionate and sometimes may come across disrespectful at times. It's totally not an intent. We've had some conversations that were, and also more so in that room where most of this action has taken place in our in-camera sessions around the on numerous issues. But nevertheless, I've always been about a person of working together. I do that in my employment, running a travel welfare agency. I have in my 12 plus years on Sanemo Chief and Council, and I will conduct myself with high regard. There's gaps at times. We'll have that. No one's perfect, but we'll hold myself very proper and ethical as representing this beautiful city. The conversations I recall, conversations I've been in, which I ponder about some of my conversations with delegates, it was mostly the hotel site behind here. And I don't regret how the questions, but maybe some of my conversation, but simple fact is through frustration. We have not yet, as a council, sat down and said, no one sat down with me and said, Bill, what's your vision? What do you want to accomplish in 4 years? We do nothing but putting out fires. I have yet talked to anyone here, and I haven't missed no sessions. when we talked the first time, which the public was seeing how some of our questions were to the people at the podium that evening, that's the first time we had a real chance to talk to these people. No one talked to us except that in the time in that SARC room. So there was a little bit of frustration. I'm digressing here, so before somebody else point of order, I'll get to my point here. And the Calgary Dam issue has been a hot topic in the city for far too long. There's lots of mixed views on the Calgary Dam. So nevertheless, I believe we're maybe getting close to that. So that's been a conversation. So to sit here and be passionate, have a hard conversation, there's going to be disagreements. And I think it's okay to disagree. And lots of people are concerned that, it's always 5-4 or the 5. And that gets, I'm not sure my view on that is, but nevertheless. So for example, I don't know how this will be. I don't know who's going to sign. I'm not sure. It's not up to myself. But if 5 don't sign, is it the will of the council? I keep hearing the will of the council, so I'm signing it because of the will of the council. So I just want to touch on some heated conversations of very serious topics with no preparation and no reports. And anytime we do speak at times during the Calgary Dams issue, I did get fired up. And it seems like if we should be allowed to ask staff questions. And if we do it, and at times it feels like it's like we're trying to be muzzled, and I fear this is a point of trying to muzzle, and I didn't sign up to be muzzled. I will work on sometimes my interaction skills, but nevertheless, I want to represent all the people, and I'm going to ask questions. Maybe too many questions, maybe silly questions, sometimes stupid questions, but nevertheless. And then when we ask questions, we get threatened personal legal liability. So there seems to be the rules and the goalposts move around a bit. So I'm not down with some of the governance structures I've witnessed in my short time here. And so I want to touch on those points. And just because I won't be signing this recent document, it doesn't mean I'm not my commitment, how respectful. I'm respectful everywhere I go in the city. I'm respectful where I go with my job. I'm respectful with my past. And I will be in the future and present. So I find it a little bit, I may be cynical, but maybe somebody trying to politicize this conversation. I don't know. Maybe I'm way off base there. But nevertheless, I respect Justice Cowling. I respect what I signed, the legal forms I signed December 1st, and I will represent passionately and be there for the people of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you for bringing up the community charter. Nowhere in the community charter does it go into detail such as what's in these documents that you would like us to sign. However, the community charter is BC law. So we've already agreed to go with it.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly agree with Councillor Yoakum that it's okay to disagree, and we've already done lots of that. And if the vote is 5-4 or 7-2 or whatever, that doesn't have anything to do with it to me. It's how we interact in getting to that vote. And people like to throw around the word dysfunction, and I would hope that this council is not dysfunctional, but I sometimes wonder. And if it is, or if it's perceived that way, I think we need to look at the meaning of that word, and that is that we are not functioning properly because possibly we forget what our roles are within this organization. And to me, this document is just a reminder of not just how we should behave, but what our roles actually are. And so when I read things like under councillor performance expectations, in governance, councillors act in the public interest at all times by conducting business with integrity and in a fair, honest, and transparent manner. Councillors consider the well-being and interests of the municipality and the community as a whole. Councillors are knowledgeable of and accept their governance role as outlined in the BC Community Charter and the City of Nanaimo Council Charter. Councillors respect the role of the city manager to oversee the administration and management of city services and programs. Councillors do not interfere with the city manager's duty to oversee the administration and management of the organization. Councillors always act in compliance with the law and are expected to be familiar with any legislation that applies to their position and duties. Councillors act in compliance with the City of Nanaimo procedure bylaw. To me, those are more than just feel-good statements. They are reminders of what our duties are and what those duties look like. So again, I fully support this entire document. And as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, a couple of items or aspects of the previous document that people were not comfortable with have been removed, such as limiting the number of speakers. So I'm fine with it, and I believe in it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, would you care to collect these and take them to the clerk? Next item, capital projects, or capital project results for the period ending 2015, June 30th. The purpose is to present a summary of the capital project results for the period ending 2015, June 30th.
Didn't have to sign the mayor's.
Please, go ahead.
No?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, we're here to answer any questions if you'd like.
Okay. Then can we get the motion on the floor, please?
So moved.
So moved. Seconded? Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none.
No, I'm on one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. Question as it relates to the vehicle purchases that have taken place to date, that's identified as an in-stream item, plus or minus $1.2 million of a $1.6 million fund. Could you just please identify which vehicles or which we have purchased for those amounts, please?
Your Worship, I'm sorry that I don't have a list of the vehicles that we've purchased to date so far, but I can get you that list.
Thank you. So it's $1.2 million plus or minus, I think. And we have $400,000+ remaining for the balance of this 4 more months. Would you please be able to identify if any of that $400,000 is allocated to any more vehicle purchases? Any more purchases?
As I indicated, Your Worship, I don't have a list of the vehicles that we've purchased so far, so I'm not sure which ones have been purchased to date and which ones will be falling, but I can get you that information.
Your Worship, if I understand the question, yes, the balance of the money that's allocated will be allocated towards purchases if it's remaining in that budgeted item.
So it would be carried over into 2016?
Yes.
If it's not utilized this year?
That's correct.
And that was question number 2. Thank you for clarifying that. Question number 1 is where we've expended the $1.2 million so far.
Cool.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll get to that.
Councillor Kett.
I was just wondering about delays in the water plant, but I won't ask it under this. Thank you.
Did you have a question? No. Okay. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, the recommendation is that Council receive for information the report pertaining to capital project results for the 6-month period ending June 30th, 2015. Call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, operating results for the period ending 2015, June 30th. The purpose is to present a summary of the operating results for the period ending 2015, June 30th. Can we have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Any questions concerning the operating results for period ending 2015, June 30th? Seeing none? Councillor Kipp.
I'm a bit slow on that. With the operating results, we've noticed because of the impact of water reductions, we've reduced revenues. How much of an impact is that? I mean, it's a great thing, but it also causes our department to lack revenue. So how is that, or what have we got as a plan for that? Do we have any ideas how we make that up?
There is a reserve set aside. It's called a water leveling reserve, which can help offset some of that, the loss in revenue. But until the end of the year, we won't know how much we're going to have that's going to be impacted.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I also wanted to discuss that one for a second, and that was the water operations. I find that very interesting that because Nanaimo is so conserves so well, factored in with the water conservation efforts that consumption's actually going down, notwithstanding the fact that there are more hookups. That's a very interesting problem to be in because it costs you a certain amount to run your operations, and you're going to have to be very careful with how you do that in the future if your consumption, notwithstanding hookups, is going down overall.
Your Worship, it's a good point, and it's further brings up the question of paying for future water supply that we're going to be needing in the near future. It just delays when we'll need it, but it certainly impacts the amount of money that we bring in to pay for the new supply.
Thank you. Councillor Gipp, do you have any further?
Well, just a follow-up on that. Interesting, I know it might not be in operating results, but the separation of gray and black water. During this drought time, gray water separation would have been phenomenal in the city. We would have been able to save quite a bit on that. So I guess that's some other time now to look at how we protect our water source, recharge our groundwater, but still have water accessible for people. So I'd be interested, have we done anything more on gray water or black water separation from the perspective of staff? Because it's not a code issue.
Your Worship, I'm not aware of anything of the extent that you're talking about. I think it's a great discussion. I think people who are using wells now within the city boundaries, there is a connection between our water supply regardless of where the water is coming from, and I think it's something that we can sink our teeth into in the Environment Committee. It may be something that they might want to have a look at and bring forward some policy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, call a question. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item, 2015-2019 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw to amend the 2015-19 Financial Plan to reflect the changes that have occurred since the bylaw was adopted on 2015 May 04. There's a staff recommendation that Council receive for information the report pertaining to Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw 2015. Do we have a mover and a seconder to get on the table? Moved? Seconded? Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 items here. I have questions on 3 of the 4. Just if you could clarify for me, please, the Colliery Dam spillway, $4.2 million budget is added. My recollection is that we had set aside $2.4 million, and I may be incorrect there, or maybe it was $2.8 million. We had set aside $2.4, for argument's sake, $1 million. And if I understand this correctly, we're adding $4.2 million to the already set aside $2 million.
Essentially, yes, we are. We've already spent $2.4 million on all of the studies and work that's been done to date. This portion will be on top of that. That is correct for the construction phase of the project.
So the construction phase is, so this is the high end of the estimate, or is this is this at the 80th percentile of the estimate to complete this project?
I believe at this point in time, this is the high end. That's correct.
Sorry, I can clarify that. Yes, the estimate for the Colliery Dam remediation is 2.8 to 4.6 million. How we arrived at the 4.2 million was council already allocated $400,000 for the design work. So the 400,000 plus the 4.2 takes us to the 4.6.
So the $400,000 allocation was encapsulated in the $2.4 million that we've exhausted or we've expended?
No, that's a separate one again, is that it was budgeted at the time it came up when council allocated that, I believe, in April of this year.
So Your Worship, it was specifically when council authorized staff to proceed with design.
So we've spent 2.8 and now we're allocating 4.8 to the construction phase, essentially. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Brennan says that's not accurate. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I want to ask if I could please. Clarification on that. You said that we had spent 2.4 already on the studies, et cetera, and that you had then added 4.2 to the budget to do the dam. And can you say whether the 0.4 was included in the 4.2?
No,
it's in addition to.
It was separate. Council previously directed us to allocate that $400,000 for the design.
Right. So the question had been that we had already spent 2.8 and we were going to spend another 4.8, and that was incorrect. We've spent 2.4, I understand.
So I should clarify the actual numbers. Council allocated 2.5 million in 2013 for the Collar Dam project. We spent 2.75 to date on that, and that's the studies. The actual budget amendment we're talking about tonight is for the actual physical construction, and we are budgeting to the high end of that at this time, hoping the cost will be lower.
And the 0.4 that you said was for design is where in those figures? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was, as I said, there was 4 items. I have questions on 3. I have another question on the first item. So if I may, just in the 2-sentence explanation here, it says the current balance of the Capital Reserve General Fund, this is in relation to the Colliery Dams, is 4.886 million before 1.2 million is used for this project. So we're taking 4,200,000 out of the reserve grant?
Pieces, thank you. There's 2 pieces to the funding. We did a accrual at the end of, I believe, 2013 for $3.1 million. And this is accounting speak, but it's in an accrual account in a liability account. What we've done now is we've moved that into the Colliery Dam Reserve. And so we have that money, plus we're going to take 1.2 from the General Capital Reserve. So hopefully that makes sense.
So we're taking $3 million from the General Reserve and 1.2 from the General, or are we taking 4.2 budget is added, of which 1.2 comes from the General Reserve? Is that correct?
No, listen. This is, we have 2 reserves, the General Capital Reserve for the 4.8, okay? And we have a Colliery Dam Reserve, which has 3.1 in it. And the reason it has the 3.1 is because we did an accrual at the end of 2013 as an estimated cost there. So there's 2 reserves that we'll be using, the Colliery Dam Reserve for 3.1, and we will be using 1.2 out of the General Capital Reserve.
Okay, so that's 4.3.
Oh, well, hopefully I didn't round it wrong. 3.1 and 1.2. 4. Sorry, my rounding. 3.1 and...
It's okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I'll just move on. The next item is the Leadership in Asset Management Program. It states that $350,000 budget is added to participate in a program to support improved asset management planning and practices. Could you just enlighten me on what we get for that $350,000 investment, please?
So that investment is a grant application that we brought to council. So the grant is a 50-50 grant. So the whole project cost would be $350,000, and the city share would be $175,000, and the grant would pay the $175,000 as well. And the project that we applied for, there's 2 phases to the project, a phase 1 and phase 2. Our phase 1 project deals with asset management and governance, and the other piece is a specific project you do, and our project that we put forward was to do levels of service.
Thank you. So the 350 is broken down into equal amounts of $175,000?
Yeah, so it's split. So the government would pay, if we were successful in the grant, the government would pay $175,000, and then we would contribute $175,000 to an overall project cost of $350,000.
And so we're doing that twice? Or there's a second phase to that?
No, the $350,000 project has 2 phases to it. It has phase 1, which is asset management and some governance pieces, and then the phase 2 piece is the project that you actually do. But it's all one main grant application.
So if we're successful, we get $525,000 for our $350,000 expenditure.
No, we get $175,000, and we contribute $175,000, so it's total project cost of $350,000.
Okay.
Your
Sorry,
worship.
so $350,000 added, but we're going to get 175 from somebody else and 175 from us. So why are they? We're only contributing 175 of the 350.
That's correct.
Your worship, if it.
So I just don't understand why $350,000 budget is added if it's only really 175. That's my.
Your worship, we have to pay it first and then we get reimbursed. I can recirculate the report that provided these details to
Okay,
council.
thank you. And then, just my last question is, 2015, the net effect of these changes is to increase, this is on page 63, is to increase the budget by 4.75 million and transfer to from accumulated surplus by 4.75 million. So we're, in essence, transferring from accumulated surplus $4.75 million to the 2015 budget?
That is correct. That's essentially transferring from reserves.
And for what purpose?
To fund the Colliery Dam, to fund these 3 projects. So the funding sources will all come from reserves and the $175,000 grant.
Okay, so thank you. Just when I was trying to add up the numbers to get to 4.75, and which prompted my questions on the Colliery Dams in the first place. And then if I understand correctly, it's a net. So on the next one, the 350, we pay up front, but we get it back. So it's really to me, it's $175,000 addition, not a 350. So when we start doing the numbers seem not to add up.
We always budget for the full amount, and you'll see that anywhere else too, like let's say the water treatment plant. We always budget for the full cost of the water treatment plant, and then the total of the funding sources, which included grants, makes up that full amount. So we always budget for the full amount.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Kep.
Yeah, just on that, the asset leadership part, I heard a part of governance. Are we involved in that? No, just staff in the governance part of that.
Yeah, it's a staff. But there will be some council, because we'll be talking about bringing policy to council and asset management policy. Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And a follow up on that, page 64, this water crossing from Chase River. We've had a number of concerns and questions come to us. We all know Mr. Cake. He's been trying to ask about this. Why does this pipe have a new maintenance project? What does it involve now?
So, Your Worship, what this $10,000 is refers to in this on page 64 is improvement to the straps that anchor the pipe to the abutments. So there are concrete, as you've seen, there are concrete foundations. The pipe sits in the bridge, and then there's a strap over top. And when the engineer had done the original analysis of it, they hadn't considered a seismic calculation. And so after this was brought to our attention by Mr. Cake, we went back and had the engineer review the seismic stability of that pipe. And although that they found that the seismic stability was good, they indicated that it could be improved if we improved the anchors to those straps. So we're in the process now of improving the anchors.
$10,000. Okay. Yeah, in this one, it did bother me when the report came back, and it said in there accusations by Mr. Cake. I thought the language was terrible. And I see this now, and he's had concerns about that pipe and was cut off a number of times on that. So I'm glad to see something's being done. I just wish it would have been done a long time ago when Mr. Cake first brought this up. This has been months and months now that was brought forward, and appreciate knowing what that was for. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff on page 64 with GIS and web mapping. The first one is GIS. Additional consulting resource required for $70,000. What was the GIS project that required? I thought we had our own GIS team.
Probably the Director of IT and Life Services would be better to answer this, but I'll give you the answer that I know. And we're implementing a GIS upgrade project. It's been going on for a little while, and this is the last bit of money they needed to complete the project, and therefore the other project at this point is delayed.
So was this budgeted for this GIS project that we had anticipated in the budget?
This is an increase to the existing budget, yes.
So can I please have what the total cost of the GIS project was? Do we know?
I'll communicate to you tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions. Call the question. To receive for information the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, we require a bylaw. So I need a motion that the financial plan amendment bylaw be passed first reading. You're moving that. Seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Need a motion that it goes to second reading, please. Moved. Seconded by Councillor Yoakum. Discussion? Seeing none? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Need a motion for third reading, please. It's moved. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item. Terminal Nickel Street Corridor Streetscape Project Technical Steering Committee. The purpose is to provide a list of appointees for Council's consideration for appointment and ratification to the Terminal Nickel Corridor Streetscape Project Technical Steering Committee. And do we have a mover for the motion, please? The staff recommendation. Moved. Seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've noticed that the Port Authority has wanted to remove membership from the terms of reference. With removing them, I would like to make a motion to add another councillor to this list, and I would nominate Councillor Bill Bestwick to be on this committee.
So we have a motion on the floor. Yeah. It's been moved and seconded.
I would like to amend it then.
Okay, amendment. Is there any of council that objects to the amendment? Okay, so the amendment, go ahead. Councillor Brannan.
So the amendment is to add another councillor.
Correct.
Is that correct? I'm going to speak against that because this committee is comprised of specific agencies and specific communities. And I think to add, and we have the mayor sitting as the city council representative, and then we have representatives from the Snuneymuxw First Nation, from the Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Corporation, South End Community, 3 members at large. I have to think that and the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association. I have to think that there was some thought put into this composition and that there was a reason for balancing it that way. So I would be very hesitant to sort of off the cuff make an amendment to this. I would much prefer to leave it as is without the Port Authority, as they've asked not to be on there, but that to leave the composition the way it is here, because I think it's quite balanced.
Thank you. Now, because it was not that the amendment was not done by consensus, we now have to speak to the amendment. So if we can have speakers to the amendment. Councillor Hong, are you speaking to the amendment?
Yes, of adding councillor. Reason why I wanted to add Councillor Bestwick. Is that right?
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Since we are the one that's forking out the most amount of money as a city, as the council, I think we should have more say than the rest of these people on this board. So having 2 representatives from council seems to make sense to me. Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Brennan, do you have anything further? I'll move on to Councillor Kipp.
Well, just that if that was the case, then really the amendment should be to add another council seat and then fill it, during another process. But to just simply choose a councillor without having discussions amongst council then I just don't think that that process is particularly helpful to this exercise.
Thank you. You'll get your turn. Councillor Kipp.
Well, thank you. I'm in favor of adding a council member. With the mayor's busy schedule, this is a hugely important piece of land. We have typically, I always think we should have at least 2 council reps on a committee. Sometimes we only have one, and if that person misses, there's no continuity. So from my perspective, I think 2 councillors on that committee wouldn't be a bad thing. The process, no one kind of wanted to go on before. Now Councillor Bestwick has asked to kind of be on it, I believe, or talked about it. So from my perspective, if he wants to go on it, I have no problem. But if somebody else wants to sit on it, I guess we have an election or something, or an appointment and vote. So typically the process, if someone wants to go on the committee from council, they can go on.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller on the amendment.
Yeah, I actually do agree with Councillor Brennan. We should be having some discussion, and I think that's what we're doing right now, is discussing on the amendment. For all the reasons that others have spoken about, I would agree with having another council member on the committee, and I have no problems with Councillor Bestwick being that council member.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question, I suppose, to you. For my clarification, my understanding was that we had an alternate to this committee, and that was Councillor Bestwick. Am I incorrect?
No, maybe I can clarify. There was intending, the group wanted to get off to a fairly quick start, and in fact they wanted to have their first meeting prior to the group actually being formed officially, because they had urgent business that they wanted to be able to recommend to council. I put out a call to councillors, to the entire council, about the Wednesday before the Tuesday upcoming meeting, and I got no takers. So on the night before the meeting, I made the decision that I would go on the committee. I find it interesting that we've got a number of folks that want to be on the committee now. But in any case, that's how it came down. I've had offers from 2 councillors to sit either as alternates, and now I see one of them has been nominated to stand as a full standing member, after I didn't get anybody. But in any case, Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I have utmost respect for the Councillor Bestwick, the work he's done in the city over years, and also support Councillor Hong's recommendation. And we're having a debate on this, a conversation. And I think let's not lose light of almost like personalities. Again, here we are. And for the simple fact, this corridor group has to get working. I think Councillor Bestwick is a great addition and a wealth of experience. So I'm definitely in support of the amendment to the motion. Thank you.
I'm wondering where people have been bringing in personalities. This is purely functional. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I respect that Councillor Hong has introduced me to be a sitting member of the Terminal Nickel Corridor Streetscape Project Technical Steering Committee. Let me dispel the mystery about perhaps being one of the 1 or 2 or 3 people who have now reached out. I'm not certain of the specific date that Mr. Chairman makes specific reference to on the Wednesday. The IT department, who I don't see here right now, will be able to confirm that my city email account was down for several days. I'm sure most members of this council know that my email was down, and most members of staff, because I reached out to let them know that my city email account was not functioning. When my city email account was not functioning, the request for any members of council who would wish to sit on this committee came out from our mayor. I did respond that I would like to sit on that committee. When that email finally made its way to the mayor after my account was reinstated, I was informed that it was too late, that the committee had already been established, and that our mayor had put himself on the committee as a result. fast forward, and the committee hasn't been officially struck. And I'm delighted that this committee is anxious and ambitious with their initiatives to get started. And I would also like to sit on that committee, whether it be by amendment or by appointment, given that 3.5 to 4 weeks ago I did offer my time and energy and resources to this committee. So either by amendment or by appointment, I'll leave it to my colleagues. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a reason why I have asked this to be set aside and discussed at a different time through a different process, because it is not comfortable and it's not common to debate individual appointments. So I don't think it's common to do it publicly. Generally speaking, you do your committee appointments in camera, and those that are done in public are generally not debated. There's a problem with this committee makeup and the balance of this committee. And one of the things that I have worked towards since I was first elected is gender balance, as well as multicultural representation and more diverse committees. One of the reasons that I'm so strong about committees is that those people who are generally marginalized from being on city committees would get their very first taste of city governance by sitting on a committee. This committee has 2 women, I think. That's why it's important to me that we do this a different way. That's why it's important to me that we look at such things as gender balance and diversity so that our committees reflect the face of our community. Women make up 51% of our community. We have a large immigrant population here. We sometimes struggle with communications with that community. That's why I've asked for this to be taken off the public discussion and brought back with a different appointment. If that's not suitable to council, I understand.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Worship. Just a point of clarity, that the current motion on the floor is simply to add a second councillor position to the terms of reference. And it was moved by Councillor Hong, but we didn't get a seconder. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Brennan. I thought it went further than that, Mr. Jackson, and it actually named someone. Councillor Hong, can you clarify that?
Well, I guess there was no second. My whole point was to get another councillor on this committee. And like I said, I did read your email. Nobody else responded until Councillor Bestwick mentioned after the fact that he would be interested, and he responded to him. It was too late, so I assumed nobody else wanted to be on this committee. I did not get any response from anybody else wanting to be on it, and Councillor Bestwick was the only person who suggested that he would like to be on it, so I nominated him because he wanted to be on that committee. So we can take him off, and I would be happy just to say put another councillor on there if there is another interest.
Okay, so you're in favor of that motion, which has now been seconded.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, the way that the motion's written is the second portion would have all the names of the individuals. That's why it was my understanding that the first was just to set the terms of reference up. The second portion, after this motion is complete, is the appointment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, regarding the gender and the race issue, do we actually publicize that when we're looking for our committees? When we ask these other, we got the Business Association, we got Snuneymuxw, we got the Chamber of Commerce. Do we ask them specifically to try and come up with gender-specific balance? Like they got women in their groups. Can we do that? And if not, should we? We should do it.
It's up to council how you wish to advertise. I think there's different ways you take it. For example, Youth Advisory Council was taking a different approach completely to look at the membership there, but that's always up to council. And then when you deliberate the makeup of committees, that's up to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll support the motion as it now stands, and it seems to me that then the process might be that you would again invite any interested councillors to put their names forward, and if Councillor Bestwick wishes to do so and nobody else did, then he would naturally be appointed. I'm quite happy with that process.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I have no problem supporting the motion, but I will be doing a follow-up motion to appoint Councillor Bestwick to this committee after the first motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, with reference to Councillor Kipp, I believe we had a discussion recently concerning you wishing to resign one of your committees in order to better the gender balance on that committee. So, interesting. I wonder if we could... No further speakers on that, so I would say let's call the question on the amendment. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Councillor Bestwick to the Terminal Nickel Street Corridor Seascape Project Technical Steering Committee.
It's been moved by Councillor Yoakum.
Sorry, Your Worship. So the amendment motion was passed. Now you have the main motion. So the main motion on the floor is as written with the addition of add a second councillor position. So I don't want to take your thunder, Councillor. Yeah. It's just put that on hold till this other main motion's considered, please.
Call a question on the. That's been moved and seconded as well.
Yes, it has.
Call a question on the main motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you. Where we go?
Now we're ready.
We're in.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Councillor Bestwick to the Terminal Nickel Corridor Seascape Project Technical Steering Committee.
Moved by Councillor Yoakum, seconded by Councillor Fuller. Councillor Brennan.
So I'm going to ask to refer this motion to the next meeting of council so that we can consider the questions of committee composition, specifically gender balance and diversity.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson.
I'm sorry, pardon me.
There's no seconder.
Got a motion for a referral.
Thank you.
Okay. Seconder? I'll second it. Okay.
Is there any discussion?
Discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. The urgency of this committee to get started was utilized as a reason to get started before it was officially structured. And when I hear of gender balance and the like, I couldn't agree more. But that said, it also serves to nobody on this council put their name forward, male or female, at the mayor's request to sit on this committee. As I stated, I did, and the email was lost in IT world and found. When I look at the makeup, we have one seat, reserve one seat at the committee table for the Nanaimo First Nation.
We didn't, so we need to say.
Carry on, Councillor.
Sorry, I just didn't want to speak over a conversation that was going on to my right.
Carry on.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKay. So it doesn't say reserve one seat at the committee table for the Nanaimo First Nation. Is that a female or is that a male? Do we know? We don't know. Thank you. Then Ms. Pamela James and Ms. Sydney Robertson. I don't know if they're both attending the meetings or they're 1 and 1A. I'm not sure. So there's 3. And then there's Ms. Leanna Plug, member at large. There's 4. So there's 4 on a committee of 9. It's not bad. It's not bad. Some votes go 5-4, some votes go 4-5. That's not bad. So on a committee of 9, it's pretty hard to get a perfect gender balance. So I would, I'm not, so when is this next meeting that this is going to be brought back up? A future meeting? Whose meeting? The technical committee's meeting, or when is this going to be brought back up? Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. I believe it's tomorrow morning.
So it's my understanding that this will return to a future council meeting. So the next special council meeting is August 31st.
But I do need to correct something that was said here. Pamela James and Sydney Robertson are, they share a position. They alternate. It's one position. And then that leaves Leanna Plug. That's 2 out of the total committee.
I don't know who the First Nations representative is. They have females on their council.
If they send someone.
Well, they're on there.
Okay, any further speakers to the referral? Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, you're correct. There are only 2 identified here. We don't know who this Nanaimo will appoint. But one thing that we do have absolute control over is how we deal with gender equity, how this council makes appointments. And I think that's something that we need to take into account. We have been we've done a very poor job of that. And so I would ask us to take a little bit of time and be thoughtful about this, and do the counting. This Nanaimo, at this point, we don't know. So we can't count that as one woman. We know that the South End is sharing an appointment, so that's one. And then we have the member at large. So really, that's 2 that we know for sure. And I would ask this council to look at that question of gender equity and just ask yourselves, how are we reflecting the face of our community?
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. May I suggest that you step down from this committee and offer it to a woman position, because you did take this committee on because nobody else had offered to. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I agree gender equality is an important issue. This committee seems to want to get going now. This is not going to be the only committee that gender equality comes up on, so it's going to be an even bigger discussion. You know, I mean, we look at gender equality on council, and we have 2 women, 5 or 7 men, and it's not equal in that proportion. But when we're looking at council representation, we have to take that into account as well. So having 2 male councillors on a committee really isn't that bad. Perhaps we need to think of, when other organizations and groups are on the committee, that they look at it as well. You know, it's a broader question. I think we need to move forward with this committee right now. They want to get going.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Well, what's our corporate equality? I think we've gone past the point on this now. We've switched from a committee and trying to change the dynamics of the whole community based on the South Nanaimo Steering Committee. Even our corporate heads, how often do we do that? I mean, do we actually say no, hire a woman? Do we say no, hire someone of a minority? Where do we get with that? How far do we go with that? I mean, if our corporation isn't having or showing equality, are we just talking at that point and not really getting to the full 30,000 foot level of our community? So I think we're off topic now on gender equity when we're trying to select a committee. That's something we sit down and strategically look at. I don't think it's like stuff pops up in the middle of these things all the time, and I'll refer to the one that popped up during a debate on cultural funding, and it was the Nanaimo Empire Day, and we got all off topic. We're off topic now on equality.
Thank you. Before we go to Councillor Brennan, maybe I'll take Councillor Hong's recommendation, and I'll step down from the committee, and we can take the referral off the table, and we can appoint Councillors Bestwick and Brennan. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. How's that sound? Okay.
Haven't decided to delay or wait or set aside gender equality for another day, for another time when it's more opportune or it's more convenient for us. I'm glad that we've decided tonight that gender equity is something that we should use, the concept of gender equity is something we should use every time we make a decision.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, for a procedure, please.
Your Worship, what I'd suggest is that you just complete this current motion to refer by passing it to a vote. If it fails, then you can consider the appointments as the list provided with the changes noted.
Okay. So, call the question on referral. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Motion, it's opposed unanimously. How will we call that? Okay. So then the question is, motion to appoint Councillors Brennan and Bestwick to the committee.
I'll make that.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Next item.
Your Worship, what about the remainder of these members?
God.
What do you want to do?
Ratify the appointments. Is that what you're looking for? All right. Item 2, ratify the appointments of the following individuals. Mr. Darren Moss. Get rid of that fellow. Reserve 1 seat for the committee table for Nanaimo First Nations. Mr. Sean Harold of the Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. Doug Calsix from the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation. Pamela James sharing a position with Ms. Sydney Robinson for the South End Community Association. Mr. Keith Brown, Member at Large. Mr. Ian Thompson, Member at Large. And Leanna Plug, Member at Large. Do we have a mover? Move it. Seconder. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Your Worship, before you go further, I just wanted to point out another bit of bureaucracy here. You skipped item 4A, Council, and that is the approval of the minutes from July the 20th.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
So if it's Council's pleasure just to return to consider that and move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. The discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. It must have been your secretary that did that. Your recording secretary. It was you. Thank you. Development permit number. Next item, DP 939 at 2912 Norwell Drive. To obtain council authorization to issue a development permit for a 2-story mixed-use building, staff recommendation is that motion that council issue the development permit. So, do we have a mover for the staff recommendation? Councillor Bestwick. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I visited that location and spoke to some people in the neighborhood. The only concern they had, and I'd like to ask a question through you to staff, is if staff sees any great impact on traffic on Country Club Drive as a result of this.
No, we don't, Your Worship. We expect they'll be coming off of Norwell Drive.
So, Your Worship, I'm going to add to that comment. As the city develops, traffic generally increases everywhere. This is one of our major roads, and we expect that these roads, whether they're a collector road or a major road, will receive more of the traffic. But I think it's fair to say that all of the development impacts the traffic, and yes, over time, this will increase it as well.
Just to follow up, if I may, Your Worship, yeah, the concern that was expressed was nothing to do directly with this development, but just the long-term impact of traffic at the corner of Country Club coming out onto Departure Bay Road, recognizing that that is a busy intersection already.
In Your Worship, I can't recall the specifics, but the transportation plan we have talks about relieving some of this traffic out to the Island Highway through Rock City Road as part of the long-term objectives, and that will certainly provide some of the relief to a new signalized intersection at that location, but that's longer term.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll be prepared to support this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I'm going to support this, but I'm really concerned that once again we're being asked to do parking variances. And it seems almost every development we get wants parking variances. And inevitably, this leads to problems in the neighborhood. We know it. We get those complaints all the time. So I really think we need to take these things into more consideration. You know, it's not much. It's 4 parking spaces. However, that's 4 parking spaces.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I just wish to echo the sentiments of Councillor Fuller. While 4 parking spaces don't sound like a lot, in 20 or 21 parking spaces it is. It's 25%, 25% of parking. And so if we're going to reduce, it's a significant reduction, 4 from 20. It doesn't, in the scheme of things, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it can be when you compound the problems. I don't want to compound the shortages in a condensed block or blocks. So it does make a difference. So I'm not going to oppose this because of the parking, but it's certainly something that I would like our design advisory panel and to pay real close attention to. Thanks.
Mr. Swaby?
So, Your Worship, the art of parking is not an exact science or planning in general. And of course, there's competing policies in the OCP about trying to reduce the auto dependency, trying to reduce the size of our roads. And one of the ways that staff looks at is to reduce the amount of parking that overall is required. So we do treat each project individually as they come through and evaluate them. If council is not comfortable with that, I completely understand, but we believe that it's a better approach to treat them individually based on their situation and what they may offer in terms of alternative modes of transportation or smaller car parking or proximity to transit within the growth nodes. All those things, I think, come into play in the OCP in terms of how you should look at parking variances, which are actually promoted in the OCP where they are reasonable. But I completely understand the concern. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing about parking and the spill off into the neighborhoods. But we believe this is an approach that is reasonable at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'm supporting this, and I actually don't have a problem with reducing the parking spaces. And the reason I don't is because we passed the transportation plan, and that transportation plan set some goals for us, and those were to reduce the use of cars, get people out of their cars, get people onto transit, get people onto bicycles and walking, and that particular spot has all of that. The buses are right across the street. You can walk to the grocery store and you can walk to the liquor store. You can cross the highway and you can use the E&N trail. It's actually the perfect place for where you want to reduce your parking and encourage people to get out of their cars because you have the alternatives there for them. And just as an added bonus, this will assist us when we lower the parking spaces required. It will assist us in reducing our carbon footprint. So these are all good things. They're tough things sometimes, but they are things that we have said as a council and as a community. We want to change the way that we operate, and that's why I have no problem with this. I think it's forward thinking, and I'm glad to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor Brennan because I hadn't really thought of it in that way, and it kind of raises our awareness around that piece of the approach to the transportation plan and the goals that they are trying to achieve, that plan is trying to achieve as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I also, instead of looking at it from the top, looking down, I would rather parking started from zero based on use. So if you had, for example, a lot of folks don't know that if you have a small lot subdivision of R2 lots, if you have 375 square meter lots, you can have a suite, even though it's R2, small subdivision, small lot subdivision. So if you've got 5 units of small lot at 1.66 that have suites, you've got 16.6 vehicles spots required. If you have the same thing, 5 units in small lot or 6 units in small lot, you're going to have about almost half the number of required parking spaces. And we've got a small lot less than 175, or pardon me, less than 375 tonight on the agenda that would have a much lesser impact on parking. If you have an apartment building that's 50 units and you put it down and way out in extension somewhere or out in the outskirts of town, yeah, you're going to need a lot more parking spaces than you are if that same unit was over by Country Club, close to a bus exchange. That's just my thing. Every one of them is different. It should be specifically done. Thank you. So, been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next one. Development Variance Permit DVP 261 at 1464 Estevan Road. The purpose is to obtain council authorization to vary the required front yard setback for siting of 2 principal buildings. Now, in this one here, it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 261. Is there anyone wishing to speak to DVP 261? Seeing no one. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the staff recommendation, please? The DVP 261, if you wanted to grab a green sheet there, sir, you could read it on there. Always feel free to grab the green sheets. Thank you. Council issue development variance permit DVP 261 at 1464 Estevan Road to vary the required front yard setback from 8.5 meters to 3.5 meters. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question through you to staff. I notice on page 81 of our agenda, it notes that the Board of Variance denied the variance request, and I'm curious as to what the reason for that would be. Is there somebody here who can help me?
Take a shot.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. So the Board of Variance looks at their applications purely from a legislative concept called hardship. So they must have determined that there wasn't a hardship that was evident. How they define that sometimes is it's not consistent, but I think they try to be objective in terms of are there alternatives that this person could use to develop it. Council is not bound by the same guidelines when you look at a development variance permit or when you look at variances in a development permit. You can evaluate that from much broader political and technical evaluation. So it's okay to apply for a development variance permit or a variance in a development permit after it's been denied by the Board of Variance. But you won't glean any more from a decision from the Board of Variance other than it was denied or approved. So I can only tell you that if it's denied, it's because they didn't see a hardship.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, we can ask for people wishing to speak. Is there someone requesting to speak to this development variance permits? Ma'am, please come down. If you'd be so kind, just give your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Laura McIntosh, 2471 Glen Drive. This is my property that I purchased, 1464 Estevan Road. Could I just address the comment about the Board of Variance? It was denied by the Board of Variance because they said it was the incorrect venue and they recommended that we come here. So that was simply it, that it was the wrong venue. I'd just like to say then that I purchased this property. I don't know if anybody's visited this property. It's a really run-down property in the neighbourhood and it's been an eyesore in the neighbourhood for a while. I retained a local architect to work within the neighbourhood plan and develop a property that they approved, and this project has support from the Brecon neighbourhood community. And my intention is to hopefully build something that takes advantage of the current R8 zoning and the neighbourhood plan for the multi-density dwelling that it has. And that's why I'm requesting the setback, because the plot is a triangular-shaped plot. It's small, and with the way that the property is oriented, the city determined it has two front sides, one of Larch and one of Estevan, so the setbacks on this site were more than they would be for another kind of site, which really restricted then my ability to develop that R8 zoning and work within the neighbourhood plan and build to a detached duplex.
Thank you. Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation. Thank you, Ms. McIntosh, for clarifying that. I did visit the property, and that's what prompted my question about the Board of Variance, so I'm glad that you've cleared that up. And certainly anything would be an improvement, I think, to what is on the property right now. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Brennan. No, okay. No, thank you. Okay. Just a moment. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this development variance permit? Seeing none, thank you. Motion?
I move that council issue development variance permit number DVP.
It's already been moved and seconded. Yeah. Work quick.
Before she spoke. Okay.
Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item, rezoning application number RA 343 at 6524 Portsmouth Road. To present a rezoning application for property located at 6524 Portsmouth to rezone the subject property from single dwelling residential R1 to residential corridor Core 1. The staff recommendation is on page 86, and it is motion that Council 1 receive the report and 2 direct staff to secure lane reserve, road dedication, bicycle parking, and community contribution prior to adoption. Should Council support the bylaw at third reading? Do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Fuller. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now we require the bylaw. Can we have a mover for the bylaw, please? Just moved, seconded. Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We require second reading. Can we have a mover for that? Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Councillor Fuller. Thank you. Moved and seconded. No discussion? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Official Community Plan Amendment Application Number OCP 80 and Rezoning Application RA 351 at 305 Milton Street. The purpose is to present an official community plan amendment application and a rezoning application for the subject property located at 305 Milton Street to amend the Old City Neighborhood Concept Plan and to rezone the subject property in order to recognize an existing 60-unit multiple family dwelling. Staff recommendations on page 94 that Council receive the report pertaining to the official community plan, amendment bylaw 2015 number 6500-030, and zoning amendment bylaw 2015 4500-084. Do we have a mover, please? Moved. Councillor Yoakum, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And now we need a mover for the motion. Councillor Fuller, thank you. Seconder by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. This is for first reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Need a mover for the second reading. Councillor Fuller and Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. This motion just keeps on giving. RA 351. Okay, so now we're into the zoning amendment bylaw. that rezone the property from 305 Milton Street to Old City Low Density Fourplex to Old City Medium Density Residential. Past first reading. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Yoakum, thank you. Councillor Pratt, thank you. Discussion, seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Second reading, please. Councillor Fuller, Councillor Pratt, thank you. Moved and seconded, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Rezoning application RA 354 at 2992 104th Street. The purpose is to present a rezoning application for property located at 2992 104th Street to rezone the subject property from single dwelling residential R1 and community service 1 to single dwelling residential small lot R2 in order to facilitate a small lot subdivision. Staff recommendation is as on page 108, and it's motion that Council 1 receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2015 number 4500-086, and 2, direct staff to secure road dedication, road work, street trees, lane dedication, building orientation, and community contribution prior to adoption of the bylaw. Should Council support the bylaw at third reading? And can we have a mover seconder again? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just a question to Mr. Corson. When we discuss lane dedication, we've had conversations in the past about existing lanes or new ones. I think of behind Northfield Road, where there's a lane and so on. My question is the width of the lane when the parking is accessed from the lane. And in so, the reason for my question is it necessary or warranted that we have the ability for two-way traffic ability in a laneway? Like, must two cars be able to pass in a lane, or can it be something potentially less than that?
Yes. Yeah. There we go. Thanks. So the engineering standards set out the standard width that we look for in a lane, and I guess the question is there parking in the lane, and can you get two cars by in that situation? I'll be honest with you, I don't actually know the answer to that. I think in this situation you'd probably have people accessing off the lane. I don't think there would be cars parked in the lane. So I assume you could get both ways.
Thank you. So maybe I can just rephrase that. I don't think that there will be parking in the lane, or I would not encourage it, unless, of course, the lane is the width of Bowen Road. But my question is more on the assumption that the parking is in the back because it can't be in the front. Then must the lane be a certain width by engineering standards for two-way traffic to traverse that lane?
Yes, Your Worship, Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Bestwick. In the case of lanes where they are accessing the properties, we do collect garbage a lot of the time. So we look at our utilities and whether we're going to be using the lane. And in this case, I believe that if that is the case, we'll have to have a width that allows for two cars to pass.
Thank you. May I just follow that up, please? You indicated if we may use that lane for garbage pickup purposes, then the width of that lane would have to be a certain width. Is it fair for me to say we're probably not using that lane for garbage pickup?
Your Worship, what I can tell you is that as part of a review of a development application, engineering does look at it, and they would help determine the width of the lane based on how we're going to be using it. I can't answer whether we are or we aren't going to be collecting garbage on it, but that's how the process would work, is that input would come from Public Works and from engineering as part of the review of what standard we want as part of the development.
Thanks. And we'll be able to discuss this more at public hearing?
Your Worship, if there's informational needs, absolutely at the public hearing, and staff can provide that beforehand as well, so that you have it if there's issues that you would like resolved or information about that.
Thanks.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I was looking for anything with regards to parking in here. Am I to understand that each of these lots would be required to have 2 parking spaces?
Your worship, that would, if that's the bylaw requirement, that's what they would be required to provide.
Okay, and each of these lots could also have secondary suites?
That's correct.
Mr. Swaby, there's 325 square meters.
I'm sorry, Your Worship, access from the lane is 375 meters, I believe. So they won't, these will not, in the interior and on the outside, the 344 is the largest. So just a single family dwelling.
Okay, so no secondary suites. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now, motion on the bylaw, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2015-4500-086 to rezone the property at 2992 104th Street from single-family residential to Community Service 1, CS1, and Community Service 1, to single-dwelling residential small lot R2 in order to facilitate a subdivision of the land into 7 small residential lots past first reading. So moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Discussion, seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And we need second reading. So moved. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. At the will of council, sir. There's no request on this one. You're more than welcome to come to the public hearing. No, you're more than welcome to come to the public. You're more than welcome to come to the public hearing on this item, which will be scheduled on a day in the future.
Your Worship, staff can talk to the applicant or the gentleman outside and answer his questions.
Thank you.
Staff will talk to you.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, next item. Liquor license application number LA 000117. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to excuse myself in the conflict of interest.
Thank you. We're on this one. Oh, I'm sorry. Barclay's pulled. And the next, the whole thing's pulled. Right. Councillor Hong, you can have your leave. You're good.
Are we doing?
Yes. You don't have a conflict. On, okay.
Beat it. Barclay's full. We're
Get out. Okay. The purpose is to obtain council resolution regarding a liquor license application from Ms. Sonia Coleman. Ms. Coleman was requesting a local government resolution in support of her application to the Provincial Liquor Control and Licensing Branch to transfer the liquor primary license from 489 Wallace Street, Tandoori Junction, to 75 Front Street, the Nanaimo Bar. As council is aware, a municipal resolution is required before the province will consider an application further. Staff recommendations on page 123 will require a motion.
Move 1, 2, and 3.
Move 1, 2, and 3. Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Discussion. Councillor Brennan.
The report is clear that the applicant moved her hours back from 2 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. But the feedback from the neighborhood is that they think that 1:30 is too late, especially for 7 days a week. So I will try to move an amendment to this to 12 o'clock, see how that goes, just in deference to the neighborhood saying that they fear the noise of another liquor establishment going on until 1:30 a.m. So if I get a seconder.
Do we have a seconder?
Okay.
Seeing no one, motion fails.
That's it. That's
Yep.
all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Regarding the times as well, through you to staff, the hours that are mentioned, is that consistent with other licensed premises that we have in the city?
So, Your Worship, there is a range of hours in the downtown for Sundays, as an example, that range from 12:30 to 2 a.m. And there's a number of them that are at 2 a.m. and a number of them that are at 12 a.m., 12 midnight. So it's sort of in that range, 12 to 2 a.m.
Thank you, Your Worship. A second question, if I may, also through you to staff. I have been asked if the liquor primary license of the current Globe Hotel is still operative, as that is in close proximity to this location. Does staff know if that license is still in effect?
Your Worship, I don't have that answer. I know Mr. Corson does, and when he comes back into the room, we'll provide it to you.
Thank you.
I'm reading him from his notes, and I don't actually see it.
Mr. Swaby, I see it says on the bottom of page 125, it's the staff's understanding that the Globe Hotel's liquor primary license has been cancelled at the request of the license holder.
Yes, Your Worship, we were to check into that, though, and verify that.
Cool. Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I know one of the concerns that has been had in the past with the RCMP has been too many of the bars closing at the same time and all these people getting out at once. So this kind of fits in with that. It's between the 12 o'clock closures and the 2 o'clock closures, so you don't have that huge number of people accessing the street all at the same time. So I'm in support of the motion.
Cool. Your Worship, the license we verified was cancelled for the Globe, the liquor license.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Worship. I'm very pleased with the owners of this new establishment about number 2, willing to participate in the bar watch. I remember we had a recent applicant recently, and they weren't really, didn't appear to be willing in the bar watch. So I'm pleased for that successful program, and these people are going to sign on to it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further discussion. Call the question. Oh, it's been moved and seconded. Correct. Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Unresolved building deficiencies. Notice on title, section 57. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies for the properties listed below, and that council, by resolution, instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below at the Land Title and Survey Authority, British Columbia, under section 57 of the Community Charter. So, anyone wishing to speak to 1482 Bay Street? Seeing no one. Anyone wishing to 1801 Bay Street? Seeing no one. 3140 Bay Street? Seeing no one. 165 Doric Avenue? Seeing no one, can I have a mover for the motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, we see a lot of these, and we're seeing more and more of these because I'm of the understanding, and I've had a few calls recently, I'm of the understanding that many of the so-called illegal secondary suites have been known to the city for years. In fact, the city has been billing them for 2 garbage, 2 water, 2 this, 2 that, etc. And one of the things you always hear is this Section 57 being such a problem. And I would just like it clarified that if the Section 57 is put onto the title, that does not mean the secondary suite has to be removed. I'd like this clarified because some of the costs for removing these things are like $30,000, $40,000. And some of the people that own these properties are relying on them to give them a little bit of money in their retirement. Now, as long as the suite is safe and the Section 57 is on the title, I find it hard to see why we would require them to remove the suite entirely.
Councillor Fuller, you're correct, is that if the notice on title is placed on the property, that the suite does not have to be removed unless there's a safety deficiency. And there's probably 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 30 that comes through and has safety deficiencies. We put the notice on, it returns to council because they are unable or won't do the upgrades. So it's very unusual. You'll see the occasional one in that case, but the whole purpose with notice on title is to allow them to remain and keep part of the housing stock.
Just to follow up, thanks for that, Mr. Seward. I really appreciate it. And hopefully people will see this council meeting and it will alleviate some of their concerns, because I know a lot of people have been extremely concerned about this. Thank you.
Thank you. And the motion has been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Community Services. Knowles Estate Reserve Fund request, Southside Minor Football Association, is introduced by Councillor Thorpe, Chair of Parks and Recreation Commission.
Thank you, Your Worship. This request appears starting on page 159 of our agendas. It's a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Commission that Council approves the sum of $15,762.76 from the Knowles Estate Reserve Fund to the Southside Minor Football Association for the purpose of football equipment for the upcoming season. This is a fund which is administered by the city. It has very specific guidelines for it. It must be used for youth sports in the Harewood area. This certainly, the football program certainly meets the criteria, and there have been no other applicants for the funds at this point.
Thank you. There's a motion on page 159. The Council approve $15,762.76 from the Knowles Estate Reserve Fund to the Southside Minor Football Association for the purchase of football equipment for the upcoming season. Can we have a mover, please? Councillor Yoakum. Councillor Yoakum, and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any wish to speak to it?
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to thank Councillor Thorpe and the Parks Committee for this going with this route. I'd like to acknowledge this evening Coach Stevenson up in the crowd. He does endless work for children and youth in the minor football in Nanaimo, and also is bringing that skill set to the youth at John Barsby High, and then we're in the recent BC Championship. So it's endless hours and volunteers and like Coach Stevenson that makes this happen. So I think it's a great usage of funds. I just want to acknowledge Coach up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. When I think of the value in this expenditure and this great gift from the Knowles Estate to be put in the hands of Coach Stevenson, who is one of the most influential men in our city, and the work that he has done tirelessly to turn an entire district into quality young men that follow his leadership outside of the sport that he loves. And they say when a person performs a task in doing something that they love, it's not a job. And let me assure you, from the walk that we walk in our city and the things that we hear about Mr. Stevenson and the programs that he operates, he does a magnificent job, and he's very humble. And the work that he does with the youth in his community, he deserves so much recognition for what he's done, and it does not go unnoticed. And I just want to compliment him for all of his efforts and energies outside of the work that he performs. because it's masterful, and I commend and compliment and respect you immensely. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, this is actually quite the reserve fund, but I think a lot of the neighborhoods in that area don't realize that it exists, and I'm wondering if this could be put out to Harewood, the South End Community Association, and the Chase River Neighborhood Association, so that they might apply in the future to it. It's a phenomenally great asset that's out there, and it's huge when someone makes that kind of donation to the city. Thanks.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, I'd like to echo the words of Councillor Yoakum and Councillor Bestwick regarding the contributions of Coach Stevenson, a highly respected individual, and we thank you for your work, sir. Second, if I could try and answer Councillor Fuller's comment, and maybe Mr. Harding can help me as well. The fund, first of all, it is only the interest of the fund which is available each year for organizations to apply to. And I think we are making organizations within the Harewood area that could benefit from this more aware of it. And certainly the Harewood Neighborhood Association is aware of it. Mr. Harding has been in touch with minor sports groups that operate in the Harewood area. So maybe, Mr. Harding, if you could just add to that.
You're on.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we've been meeting with different sports groups also. One of the reasons Mr. Stevenson knew about this is we approached him too, because we knew of, again, the great work that Southside Football does. We wanted to make sure that they were aware of this a number of years ago, as we have some other sports groups. And we, particularly in the Harewood Neighborhood Association right now, one of the groups working on the youth park, starting to fundraise for the youth park, the skateboard park. We made sure that they're aware of this, as well as we've used some of the funds for part of Deverell Square, some Deverell Square work a few years ago when we did the water park and some of the other things there. So, but we have to, Council Flow is correct, we have to continue to let people aware that it's there, that sometimes I forget. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It seems to me, I don't know if anybody, I just wanted to say to the coach, I didn't see at the game on Saturday, and I think it was a Barsby kid that actually turned the corner on the game. That was one of the most exciting junior football games I've ever been to. That was a great game, and he's a good kid, and it was a good team effort. So, this has been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Nanaimo Youth Advisory Council vacancies. To advise council vacancies on the Nanaimo Youth Advisory Council, and the motion on page 164 is that council directs staff to advertise for youth between ages 15 to 24 to fill 2 vacancies on the Youth Advisory Council for a term ending 2016 May 4th. I wonder if we were asking Councillor Hong. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. As we all know, youth tend to move a lot, and 2 of these have moved on to universities. So I think that's a different challenge in a young community, a committee that we have. So we're requesting 2 vacancies be filled with the ads, but we're also, I would like to make an amendment to this that it didn't show up, that we would like to amend the terms of reference to include 2 Nanaimo First Nations youth, if they choose so to be on our committee. So that would change the total to 14 youths. And if they are not interested in being offered the community role, then we would leave it as is.
Okay. So
we do that here, or?
So I would suggest that making an amendment such as that by consent of council, if nobody on council objects, we can consider. Go ahead.
So the motion hasn't been moved yet, so simply Councillor Hong could state the motion with those words and we could proceed from there.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we amend the terms of reference for the Nanaimo Youth Advisory Council to include 2 Nanaimo First Nations youth if they so choose to be on this committee.
Good. Seconded by Councillor Fuller.
It's my understanding that you read the original motion and that addition. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, since we
Yep.
didn't move the
Great.
first, yeah.
Okay.
And the first one.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so then, any discussion on the question? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Back to the main motion? Done? Great, thank you. I wonder, Mr. Jackson, if you might, it seems to me that this is going to be an ongoing issue for this committee, only because of the nature of the beast. Is there anything council can do? We're going to have to go out and advertise for the vacancies here now. I think we did it about 6 or 8 months ago, had to do the same thing. It may well be we're doing it twice a year. Is there any mechanism open to us within the charter or within our own procedures to be able to create a reserve list or something like that?
I think what we could do is return to council with some suggestions and even perhaps speaking to the Youth Advisory Council themselves if they have some ideas. John Horn's the social planner, and I think through staff we can follow up.
Sure. So they could just automatically appoint as vacancies come
We'll
up.
look for mechanisms
Sure.
council can do that. Yep.
Great. So, do we need a motion to ask for that report, sir?
It's always better to put it in a motion than it's on the record. Certainly.
Councillor Hong, do you want to make that motion?
Yes, I would. I would like to make a motion that the council directs staff to find other mechanisms for us to appoint members to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded? Call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Habitat for Humanity Development Cost Charge Request for Reduction. The purpose is to provide Social Planning Advisory Committee's recommendation to Council regarding the request by Habitat for Humanity for a 50% reduction in the development cost charges, associated with 2360 Extension Road. There is a motion on page 167 that Council provide relief of 50% of the development cost charges for the 6-unit Habitat for Humanity development at 2360 Extension Road, and that the funds to provide that relief be drawn from the City of Nanaimo's Housing Legacy Reserve. Do we have a mover?
I'll move the committee recommendation.
Move the committee. Thank you, Councillor Thorpe and Pratt. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Unauthorized suites and illegal construction in single-family dwelling, 560 Pythian Lane. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to property maintenance for the properties below, and that's the only one on there is Pythian Lane. So, wait a minute. Am I reading that correctly? No, Pythian Lane. Pardon me, that's illegal construction. Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak to 560 Pythian Lane? Seeing none, call the question. Pardon me. Move the recommendation, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Pratt, thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Further to Councillor Fuller's question earlier on, this house contains 4 suites, so it is a different situation, but as I say, they occasionally come up, and we'll certainly continue to work with the property owner to hopefully bring this down to a house with 1 suite. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Departure Bay Beachfront Accessibility and Utility Improvements. The purpose is to advise council of a public tender call of $250,000 and above in accordance with the city's purchasing bylaw. Before we go into moving the recommendation, there is a delegate. Thank you, sir. Please give your name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Dave Shilbeer of 2920 Hammond Bay Road, and I'm making this presentation on behalf of the Departure Bay Neighbourhood Association Executive and many members. I have been 15 years on the executive of the Departure Bay Neighbourhood Association since it was founded in spring of year 2000. I'm here to ask that Council approve the motion before you to receive for information the staff report on the project, but also we want to ask that you give final construction approval up to the current estimated project cost. The existing walkway was built in 1969. It's got excessive cross slope in the pathway part where people will walk along. It's okay at the Kinhut Park area, along the grassed area, but all the areas in front of the paved beachfront parking, the rest of the length, the slope is up to 16% crossfall. The slope that you walk along, that's over 7 times steeper than the current city standard of 2% sidewalk crossfall. In May 2006, the Departure Bay Neighbourhood Plan was completed, and there was an action item 3.4.2, and the objective of that was to improve the walking opportunities in Departure Bay and to ensure safe and pleasant pedestrian use of recreational areas. And the 2 actions out of that were to improve accessibility of the existing beachfront walkway by decreasing the current cross slope, and the second item was to improve the beachfront walkway lighting. And those were medium and short-term projects. I should mention that I'm here tonight with 2 other members of our executive in support of this motion. It's difficult or impossible for residents with any sort of mobility challenges, hip and knee problems, and other things such as that to walk along the pathway. The improvements proposed have been supported by many residents during the 2006 plan preparation, and at the March 2014, the city staff came to our association's annual general meeting. This was in March of 2014 at our AGM, and everybody was in favour with it. They said, let's get on with it. It's much used by local residents, citywide residents, and as you know, many visitors to the areas. This is the prime Ocean Beach area. The project was delayed due to, first of all, obtaining Snuneymuxw First Nation approval of the concept. Then there's been an archaeological investigation and the design process that have also included further inspections of the pipe crossings and adjacent other services. The scope is expanded in the final design with replacement of some of the old drainage pipes below the walkway and some below the parking areas. And also it's been expanded a bit to lessening the slope on the car parking stalls in the paved area. Both of these have increased the scope and cost of the project, but they're considered appropriate to fix at the time of doing the other works. So in conclusion, Departure Bay Neighbourhood Association hopes that Council will support proceeding immediately with the project so that construction can be completed during the fall of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir. So we need a moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Moved and seconded. Councillor Bestwick, did you wish to speak to it?
I do.
Thank you.
Just a question, please. As it relates to the lighting component, new walkway lights, could you help me with their height? Are they real high? Are they at closer to grade, or a little more above grade? So the ambient light is not coming from real high, but actually for the walkway itself.
There's 2 different aspects to the lighting. One is the walkway lighting in itself, so that's to a pedestrian standards. That's 6-meter lighting, and very similar to what you see in Mateo Sutton Park, the ornamental lights. And then there's 3 11-meter standard street lights for lighting the parking area and the roadway along Departure Bay between the edge of Kin Park and the north end of the walkway.
Has there been any consideration for somewhat more subtle lighting along there for for the pedestrians, of course? But when the lamp standards become 11 meters and I forget what you said the first one was
6 meters. So
6 meters. Then it really sheds quite a whole lot of light versus sort of that ambient pedestrian light along ocean frontage?
Yeah, absolutely. We've worked with an electrical engineer that specializes in street lighting and tried to approach it with the two different standards in mind. One for the roadway lighting, so the lights that are aimed at the roadway are lighting it with the intention for vehicles and the parking area, and the lights that are aimed at the pedestrian walkway are lighted to a standard that's as you say, suitable for pedestrians and a bit different.
Yeah, I've just been to so many places where you walk waterfronts, such as that, and the lighting is lower and softer, and quite frankly, more pleasant than the higher lights with the huge scope that they cover. So I was just wondering if there was a consideration for that walkway to be safe, of course, with the lighting, but just a little bit more modest and a little softer for aesthetically. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm certainly all in favor of this project and would like to see it move ahead as quickly as possible. I do have a question, if I may, through you to staff. It's as I look at the diagram, I guess it would be page 174 in our agenda, showing the suggested improvements, including the street lights. My question has to do with the parking, and I'm just curious why we're indicating parallel parking on the segment of the beachfront nearer to Bay Street as opposed to front-end parking, which is the rest of the beachfront. It seems to me that parallel parking would allow for fewer parking spaces and would be a little bit more inconvenient. Can staff answer that?
The reason why we moved to parallel parking in that specific section is because the cross slope gets quite a bit steeper in that area, and we had to make in that area it's a 4-step transition, so it takes quite a bit more space to transition from the walkway up to the parking area. And because it takes a bit more space, it's left less room for parking. And when we looked at cars pulling out of a parking spot, backing onto Departure Bay Road, we found that they would be backing into the travel lane, and it was we just weren't comfortable with the risk that presents on a busy road like Departure Bay Road for cars to be backing into Departure Bay Road. So we moved it to parallel parking in that one section. But we, as you mentioned, we maintained the front end and parking for the rest of the area, because there was enough room for them to back out without blocking the lane.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was wanting to check with staff on the process here. The motion is to receive the report for information. Later and the delegation asked us to approve the higher expenditure. So I'm just looking for some direction here on the procedure. The report says that it's anticipated the funding shortfall will be allocated from general reserves, and there will be a budget bylaw amendment brought to us. So is there any danger that we receive this report and then we move along and we get a budget bylaw amendment and we turn it down and then the work can't be done?
So there is certainly some risk if you were to, when the budget bylaw came up, if you were to turn that down, we would have already proceeded with the tender at that point. So that would be challenging, the way this process works. So this report is to inform you that we're going to tender and that we did have some budget constraints and how we've dealt with those budget constraints.
Okay, and typically this would just proceed and the tender would be put out, the work would be done, and we would get unless there's objections at this point about it, I suppose.
Yeah, yes, the normal process is that we would come to you with this report indicating that we are proceeding to tender.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. See no further discussion. It's been moved and seconded. The council received for information a report regarding the Departure Bay Beachfront Accessibility and Utility Improvements tender. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item. Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to property maintenance for the properties listed below. First one, 1667 Extension Road. Anyone wishing to speak to 1667 Extension Road? Seeing no one. Next one, 345 Howard Avenue. Thank you, sir. If you give your name and address and speak fairly close to the microphone, that'd be great.
My name is Larry Goldberg. I reside right now at 345 Howard Avenue. It's actually my mother's house. I own a small house on Gabriel Island. I have been living there looking after her, Shirley Goldberg. She's a local, a person who's done quite a bit for the Nanaimo community. She's 91. She's just about to have her 92nd birthday, and she has Parkinson's disease, and it's been very challenging and rather depressing. And I know I'm kind of pulling a few names, cards, and everything, but of course Mayor Corpin actually gave her an award for community service and things like that. And I'm trying to follow through on her wishes of being able to keep her in her own home and as long as possible. That does not excuse by any means the mess that the property is in, but it sort of explains the state of depression that has led to me not being able to keep the property in decent shape. Now I have cleaned up quite a bit of the mess, and the fellow from bylaw enforcement, I'm trying to remember his name. Anyhow, he said, he was impressed, and he said that there would be enough time for me to finish up the job myself. But I just thought I'd come before you and ask if it would be possible to get one more month so that I've got plenty of time before the trucks roll up and bills, start getting written regarding the work and everything. And that'll make sure I will have the property in complete compliance. I've already gotten rid of the furniture, and we've been in communication with the bylaw enforcement officer and have an understanding as to what needs to be done regarding boat trailers, the boat trailer and the various automobiles there. And we'll have that all sorted out easily before a week or two. But the mess in the carport, which I've gotten halfway through, or about a third of the way through, it's a big mess, and I am working on it. So I was just hoping if I could get like one more month extension on all of this, then I promise City Council I will have it looking beautiful. And I do admit, that if I was looking at my neighbor's property and it looked like this, I wouldn't be happy. But so, I understand the problem. Quite a bit has been done since this came to everybody's attention. But, and I will get it cleaned up before the city has to come in and, write a bill, clean up and write us a bill. I will get this all attended to, but I was hoping to get an extra month.
So you're looking for 6 weeks in total?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for the delegation? No? Councillor Brennan?
I just wanted to comment to you that I know your mother, and I know her quite well, and I admire her, and sorry to hear that she's doing poorly right now. But thank you for looking after her. She's a great asset to our community.
I've been doing the best possible job I can, looking after her and keeping her in her home.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. If you're going to make a motion, can we maybe do it at the end?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak to 1130 Vancouver Avenue? Thank you, sir. How about 244 Fry Street? Anyone wishing to speak to 244 Fry Street? Seeing Seeing no one?
It's in,
Seeing no one, can we have a recommendation on the motion concerning 1, 2, 3, items number 2, 4, and 5, please?
Your Worship, there is a seventh on the next page,
Oh my
233
goodness.
Mill Road.
2336 Mill Road. Anyone wishing to speak to 2336 Mill Road? There's some sporty looking wheels. No, there's some pop cans. All right then, looks like Coast Environmental's already been out there. Okay, great, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak to 2336 Mill Road? Seeing no one. Can we have a motion concerning items 2, 4, 5, and 7, please?
We'll move the recommendation, staff recommendation, that those properties be ordered to remove the material as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agent at the owner's cost.
Thank you. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Yoakum.
I'd like to make a motion to give 3, 4, 5 Howard Avenue the 6 weeks the gentleman requested, the delegation requested this evening.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item, bylaws with no accompanying report. Motion on page 180, zoning amendment bylaw. Wow. 2013, number 4500-048, RA 319, to amend an existing covenant to 6010, 6020, 6025, and 6045 Lindley Valley Drive, 5730 and 5757 Turner Road, and 4900 and 4950 Uplands Drive, in order to relocate the required non-market housing and to rezone the properties from R8, 9-6, and CC3, and Core 3, Core 1, CC3, R8, and R6, in order to permit a mixed-use development be adopted. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Bestwick. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, motion that highway closure and dedication removal portion of Madsen Road adjacent to 400 and 405 Madsen Road, bylaw 2015, number 7195, be adopted. Mover, please. Councillor Bestwick, thank you. Councillor Pratt, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion that highway closure and dedication removal portion of Lambert Avenue adjacent to 306 Hillcrest Avenue and a lane adjacent to 525 3rd Street, bylaw 2015, number 7214, past third reading. Councillor Bestwick. Councillor Thorpe this time. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, correspondence, none. Council appointments, none. Notice of motion. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Earlier in the meeting, you made reference to the Watson report, and I would like to serve notice that I will be making a motion at the next regular meeting of council for staff to bring forward a report giving us what progress has been made on the Watson report recommendations.
Thank you. Any others? Yes, Mr. Jackson.
Your Worship, I was just thinking the next regular council meeting will be September 21st, but that one actually is going to be likely cancelled because of UBCM. So then the next regular council meeting won't be till October. So you just use those words specifically, so I'm thinking perhaps you're considering the next special open council meeting or committee of the whole?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And that reminds me that I should also ask if that's a reasonable time frame for staff to have that report.
Well, that would be the motion to go ahead and create that report. It wouldn't be that meeting that you'd receive the report.
Thank you. So I'd be happy with that wording.
Okay, thank you. Special open meeting then.
Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Can we please confirm now that the September 21st meeting is canceled?
The meeting is canceled. The UBCM is taking place.
Your Worship, I would concur with Councillor Bestwick that because of UBCM, it's a cancelled meeting.
What I'd recommend is if council wishes to consider that motion, what it would be is the September 21st regular council meeting be canceled and the September 14th committee of the whole be changed to a council meeting. That way you would have a council meeting in September.
Thank you. Sure. Do we have a mover for that motion? Mr. Hong, Councillor Hong, move that. Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Any discussion? Seeing none. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, other business. At the Committee of the Whole meeting held 2015 August 10, Councillor Bestwick advised he'll be bringing forward the following motion to this meeting. That council, in anticipation of the reacquisition of 100 Gordon Street, direct staff to prepare a report with options and cost estimates to undertake the following. A, remove signage and fencing from the property, level and place driveway, chip or pave the property. C, make the property available for use by tour buses, RVs, and D, prepare the site for pay parking use. Thank you.
So moved.
And is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Any discussion? Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just think the site is looking a little ragged right now. The tarps have been flopping around down there. It's a space we could use and clean up, and I think this is appropriate at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I'm just wondering, has that site been put back on the market yet? And if not, could that be added into this motion?
Well, we're asking for a report here.
Oh, okay.
Nothing more.
Well, could that be added to the report?
About to put it on the market?
Yeah.
Okay.
ASAP. I don't know. One way or the other.
Mr.
It'd be nice
Swaby.
if it was on the market again.
Your Worship, we can respond to anything Council wants. If I think a report on what Council would like to do now that the hotel deal is defunct is a good report. So if you would like to make that amendment, we could bring that forward as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. With no disrespect to the amendment, but if there wishes to be two motions, but if we could keep the focus on the report for staff to bring back on an alternative use from what it currently is today and to clean it up, and that's the intent of my motion. So that it may have a more purposeful function and not so unsightly. If we wish to speak to what the purpose or what we intend to do with that lot or would like to do or the alternatives or the options in the future, then I'd like that, or speaking to putting it on the market, so to speak, then I'd like that to be separated in a different motion. Or another motion and a different report. That's just how I feel about adding it to the existing motion that's on the floor.
Councillor Fuller.
I'd be very amenable to doing that at a future time. With regards to the report, could it be broadened from just those 4 specific items to include other types of beautification that might be possible on that site?
Your Worship, whatever you would like to direct us to do, we'll bring back.
Thank you. So there is a motion on the floor right now, however. Council, in anticipation of the acquisition of Gordon Street, direct staff to prepare a report with options and cost estimates to undertake the following. Removal of the signage and fencing from the property, level and place driveway, chip or pave the property, make the property available for use by tour buses, RVs, and prepare the site for parking use. So is there any desire to amend that motion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Can we count on that, please? Can we do it with a little bit?
I believe
more
that was unanimous. I didn't
Okay,
catch
thank you.
any opposition.
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Next item, at the Committee of the Whole meeting held August 10th, 2015, Councillor Brennan advised she would bring forward the following motion to the 2015 August 17 regular meeting of Council. Quote, that Council direct staff to prepare a report regarding recent fires in Nanaimo, specifically addressing how a new fire station and 2-member engines would have affected response times and property damage, and how a new fire station and 4-member engines would have affected response time and property damage. Do we have a mover for that motion? Councillor Brannan. Seconder, Councillor Pratt. Yep, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next one. Lacrosse. What? Pardon me.
Just to clarify, Councillor Bestwick was opposed. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
There's another motion requested, or notice of motion concerning lacrosse.
That's correct, through Councillor Kipp. It was not a notice, but it's other business.
The business information item. In the last week, the Nanaimo Senior B lacrosse team won the British Columbia Championship. They beat Ladner Pioneers, one of the strong opponents in the BC League, a Canadian champion a number of times. But the Nanaimo Senior B Timbermen will now play for the President's Cup, which is a 8-team tournament back in Ontario. They go to St. Catharines to play, and they leave August 31st, so they're looking for fundraising and some beer and burgers and that. But congratulations out to our Senior B team for being BC champions and going off to represent Nanaimo at the Canadians. I did go with the team back in 2013 to a tournament in Montreal, the President's Cup. They represented a community phenomenally, did a great job. And this year they got, I think, a good chance to maybe medal at the Canadians. So quite proud of the team, and if anybody can support them, they'll be out there in the community fundraising. It's about 30 people will be going back with the team, the 25 players, coaches and managers, and it's about a $45,000 to $50,000 adventure to take them back there. It's a 1-week tournament. They're there for a week to 8-9 days, and it's an expensive trip for the team to represent Nanaimo. So, congratulations.
I remember you going a couple of years ago. Was that the Senior A or B?
Senior B.
Senior B. Yeah. Wow.
Senior A's didn't make the playoffs. Senior B's won the BC championship.
Thank you. I just wanted to say before we go into question period, to remind Councillors Bestwick and Brennan that you have a meeting tomorrow morning at 7:30 at the Sark Building, and Councillor Bestwick said he'd pick you up.
Couldn't possibly be. I'll pick you up.
Now we go into question period, please. Mr. Taylor.
Fred Taylor of 204 Emery Way. You adopted minutes tonight that are very close to 30 days before adoption. And if you look at page 24, it's recorded that Fred Taylor asked a question about advertisement of the City Pound contract. When am I going to hear and see a copy of that ad? You both said you'd get back to me the next day, and nobody has yet. And I hear as late of Saturday, the ad was so small, there was one apparently, so small you couldn't find it. Now I would think and question the size of the ad for advertising for contracts with the city should be of a certain size so it sticks out like a sore thumb in the paper. And that was a very comment I heard as of this last Saturday, that there was an ad, but you couldn't see it or find it. And what the reason was for that is suspicious to me.
What are you suggesting?
For me?
What are you suggesting, sir?